Thank you, Charlene, and welcome, and thank you for coming to our presentations here. So I'm going to be covering finding one's path and covering one's purpose in life. Subtitle down there, Treading the Path to Truth, Beauty, and Goodness. I met Dr. Baker in 1970 when he came to Minneapolis and St. Paul to Little Elephant and to work with him and be his protege. I've got quite a few slides to share with you. And I have been accused of turning PowerPoints into movies, so just be aware. So this was from the obituary for Dr. Baker when he passed. It was in the Times back in 2011. Uh, Men such as these are rare. They are not for the ages, but for all time. I heard Dr. Baker in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1972. His talks were a blessing and a deliverance for me. He answered so many unanswered questions, gave me hope, courage, and the will to live. He was a true giant among men and a profound teacher. These are Kristen Campbell there. For within you is the light of the world, the only light that can shed upon the path. If you're unable to perceive it within you, it is useless to look for it elsewhere. Here we're at Little Elephant. You can see, let's see if so you see Dr. Baker here. I usually was closely allied with him. Some of you will recognize some of the people here from the community, but again, I'm going to have to kind of move quickly to get this in for you. This would be typical for the advertising for either the summer schools or the international festivals of yoga and esoteric sciences that we participated in over the years. Here we're at the Claregate Summer School in Spigno, Italy. I got everybody cracked up. Someone was trying to get in front of me. So I jumped in front there, and you see everybody smiling. That's David Zimmerman, by the way, who I'm taking his place. He couldn't be here, and let's just keep going. This was the Esoteric Summer School in South Africa in Cape Town. Here I'm with Dr. Baker at the Esoteric Summer School there. Actually, we celebrated his 80th birthday that time. Here I'm fielding questions for him. You'll notice in the background here, these are all the types of posters, the Platonic and Archimedean solids, Fibonacci numbers, all of my stuff that I usually stuck on the walls when we would work together. Dr. Baker, as you know, would like to do these chalk drawings. Oftentimes I would be on stage with him. Here I'm introducing him actually right in this hall back when we were at the community college. Here again, some of his drawings. I've collected the drawings over the years. Every time that he'd be done lecturing, I'd pack them up and keep them. Here we are again. I do know many of Dr. Baker's past lives. One of them was Eliphas Levi. And I want you to notice the skull structure there, but also the body type and the hands, but the face. Usually, one thing I've noticed about reincarnation is sometimes you'll see that the eyes persist through the lives. Dr. Baker turned me on to Madame Blavatsky, which in turn turned me on to understanding Plato at a deeper level. So I cut my teeth on the ancient wisdom with him. Plato is the world's interpreter. The ideas of both Pythagoras and Plato were identical with ours. That's from the Key to Theosophy. Here's an example of something back in 2010 at the English ashram. Little Elephant was the English ashram. I think this is going automatically here. So Buddha, Plato, and the Path to Enlightenment. This actually was up in Detroit for the Theosophical Society up there. And that's where David Zimmerman is. So I just kind of want to a shout out to David. Here's a statement. Probably should have some quotations marks on this. This is really coming from Ariel Sanat, who I'll have a conversation with tomorrow. He's in the back here now. Truth is a pathless land, and it suggests that truth is limitless and cannot be confined to any specific religion, sect, or organized belief system. He argues that attempting to reach truth through structured paths leads to crystallization of beliefs, which can become dogmatic and restrictive. Instead, he advocates for an individual exploration of truth free from constraints of organized systems. And Ariel and I will have a more of a conversation about this tomorrow. You must find, if not rediscover, your own path. And I'm in full agreement with that. Nevertheless, and this is kind of my stuff, teachers, mentors, gurus can help point out the way. Well, it's actually Ariel in mine. But in the end, the individual must find their own path. One's life becomes the path, and the ideal is to suss out one's soul's purpose and then construct, literally weave the antakarana in such a way that one remains consistent with the impulse or reason behind one's incarnation. And before I go to this slide, that's one of the things I've done a lot of studies and research and lecturing for the International Association of Near-Death Studies. When people have a near-death experience and they have an empathic life review again and again, they realize you come into incarnation with a purpose, and oftentimes they've missed the goal, and then they have to kind of recalculate. It's like the GPS. So sacred geometry, this is some of the old things I used to teach, and its study assists in the construction of the antakarana, the rainbow bridge, the path back to the source. This is why it is the most central study in the sacred institutions of the mysteries from time immemorial. Clearly, the ancient Egyptians had the key, Pythagoras and Plato did. They got it from the Egyptians, but they also got it from their initiations into the Egyptian mysteries, but also for Plato into the Eleusinian mysteries, which is something we're going to talk about again tomorrow, possibly reinstituting the Eleusinian mysteries. We have the opportunity to consciously construct the bridge, to consciously navigate the crossing. I'd already given those quotes. So it's the quadrivium that the ancients would study before they would enter into the halls of initiation. The four mathematical disciplines: arithmetic, pure number; harmonics, number and time; geometry, number and space; and spherics or astronomy, number and space and time. So Madame Blavatsky made it very clear that what I'm telling you is the absolute truth. The proportional symmetry that was revealed at these ancient initiations and passed down by the early Atlantean adepts was this tradition. And what Blavatsky says, and notice that these are not my italics, that's Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine. All the rules of proportion are those taught anciently at initiations, and one should acquaint oneself with the truly divine art and understand the deep esoteric significance hidden in every rule and law of proportion. Now, we are going to talk a little bit today about my path as an illustration. You have to find your own path. I'm not trying to say this is how you have to do it, but this is how I went about it. So the antakarana, the rainbow bridge, comes from the two words antar, between, karana, to do or act. It's the intermediate action or development, the tethering between the higher self and the personality, and it involves, according to Bailey, formulas and the path of return. Here we have on the left there the Moody Blues, In Search of the Lost Chord. That's what it's all about, the antakarana. Plato made it very clear that the connection or bridge, the journey upwards, is through sacred geometry. It's geometry, we call it sacred because that's how nature and the universe works. Thomas Taylor said, geometry enables its votary like a bridge to pass over the obscurity of the material nature as over some dark sea to the luminous regions of perfect reality. So we have the famous quote or statement of Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, as above, so below, and as below, so above. The key is, however, the missing third factor. You need an intermediate factor. That's the antakarana, that's the bond. It actually turns out to be the golden mean number system, which actually creates this divine proportion, and it unites the what seems to be a duality through that third factor into the oneness. It really always is one, but this is what happens, and you need the third factor. By the way, you see here the star Sirius, the dog star. You see the Smaragdine tablet, and you see him one arm up, one down, like in the tarot deck of the magician, as above, so below. Caduceus is the most sacred symbol we probably have next to or along with the pentagram. Pentagram because it has all the golden cuts, but the caduceus has the three factors, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. So we're all on a path, we're all on a quest, but some people who've had near-death experiences as children, particularly, or in my case, I had a perinatal experience, we have maybe a little bit of an advantage, but we can help others to understand this. We're like the dahlias, closed up like that, and we want to open up. We want to transform like the lotus you saw. Philolaus was the Pythagorean who had a big impact on Plato, and all things that can be known contain number. Without this, nothing can be thought or known. So I'm going to share part of my path in terms of my perinatal experience in 1949. In 68 and 69, I had a spontaneous out-of-body experience that I'll talk about. 1971, when I was on a lecture tour with Dr. Baker, I was extracted by a higher being out of my body. In 1975, when I graduated from the University of Minnesota, I had written Platonic Aesthetics, my Summa thesis, and then 75, I go across the big pond to London. And from 75 to 77, I worked with Dr. Baker, doing research for him while I was doing my master's degree at Birkbeck College, also studying with David Bohm, who read my master's thesis. And I was studying Plato, Aristotle, and philosophy of science. And so my perinatal experience. So I was born into a beautiful family. I was very fortunate. I probably didn't deserve it. My father was saintly. My mother was really an angelic. Uh, Nancy hadn't been born yet. Kathy, just a wonderful sister. You can tell Ted was a little bit naughty. You can just see it in the eyes. Um, so my first memories actually occurred 2 days when I was 2 days old. You don't remember these. You have to recapitulate them as you go on, but that's a whole nother story. So I was aware, floating up in the air, I was out of the body, watching them carry me from this black vehicle on the right. I was never supposed to know about that car because my father bought the 1949 blue Pontiac you see on the left. I could see colors. I was in a blue baby basket. They marched me up to the house. I remember saying to myself, oh no, here we go again. They get to the threshold of the door. There's something about crossing thresholds or coming into the body that is like a lead brick and you black out. So I started to black out, sink, and then early memories are looking up at my mother's face, etc. But then what happens is there were these other threshold experiences that occurred that assisted in the remembering. As you see on the bottom here, Plato's anamnesis, non-amnesia. Knowledge or learning is remembrance. Birth is a forgetting, as we were seeing in these earlier presentations, and then life is remembering. So at age 4, I was lying on a sharp pointed rock. Must have been like the summer solstice, sun beating down, had a transformative experience, memory. Age 5, my father accidentally runs me over. It's all my fault. Long story. I'm not going to tell you about it now. But I had a tire track on the side of my face. I rolled into the car. I barely survived. Age 6, tonsillectomy. They gave me ether. Uh, I'd love to give you the details. When they gave me the ether, the same blacking out, sinking feeling, memory of the perinatal experience. And it's triggering memories of the beauty, symmetry, and harmony that was my duty to try to figure out. And ultimately, it was interesting. It was triggered by horses, beauty of horses. Now, if you think this is bizarre, I've given you some information here about Robin Richardson. her near-death experience is much more incredible than my perinatal experience. She died at age 6 and shot out of the body and in full consciousness, the infinities, the galaxies, everything incredible. But her mother called her back in. She, excuse me. She died of the Asian flu. She had been packed in this red basket, laundry basket, that her mother, for whatever reason, kept and and kept wherever they moved. It was always there. But at the age of 8, she found it behind a washer or dryer, and it brought back the memories of what happened when she was 6 months old, and it's incredible. I have a link here that when you get the film, you can, or the video of this, you can check that out. But there's another one, Hooked Out of Heaven by Mother's Love. And what she does is she has this lambdoma that she plays. It's a Pythagorean instrument in which she can play any harmonic intervals and the fractals of them. And it's stunning. She's in Sarasota, beautiful woman. Every time I'm at the near-death conferences, she and I get together and talk business. Uh, so it's the horses down there on the left that their beauty is what really rocked me as a child. But then all of the flora and the fauna. And then I had a brother who was Hercules incarnate, the strongest person in the two-arm curl in the world, who was Mr. Minnesota. Excuse me, had a really big impact upon me. He was, it drew me into bodybuilding, and so that's kind of what I ended up doing. And of course, the Plato and Aristotle, that was a big part of everything. So what Ted, my brother, did, the impact he had on me was in terms of focus, intention, and will, the first power, the first ray of will and power. And I want you to notice in these the yogis, uh, the Shivite yogi, you look at the eyes, the eyes, the eyes. As Plato said, the eyes not only take the light in, they exude the light. We are projecting all the time. If you're in a classroom and you're teaching your students, and even if they don't understand what you're saying, you're projecting to them the knowledge always. So when I was at the University of Minnesota, I was training for first the Mr. Twin Cities and then the Mr. Well, it was the collegiate, or no, not collegiate. This was the Teenage Mr. America I was training for. But I had learned how to use transcendental meditation, intense focus of the mind. I used crystal ball. I had a brainwave synchronizer that I could sync into any of the brainwave rhythms. I was doing a course with Mulford Q. Sibley with 6 other students, or 7 of us, and I was comparing the effects of these concentration, transcendental meditation, and some various psychotropics. I started working with entheogens at that point, and I would use this focus over on the left there. The Moire pattern was really important. And then I would use the tape recorder. I would put my body to rest, very much like the yogis in the initial states of meditation. And then I would program myself to lift heavier and heavier weights, body build. And then it ended up being tied for second in the Teenage Mr. America and ended up third. However, one day when I'm not focusing and doing all this stuff, and I had developed some mild psychokinetic abilities to move objects very slightly, but that was just a part of the development. But then I went up to my dormitory room, 7th floor of a 14-story dormitory, Middlebrook Hall, laid down in the bed, put a towel over my eyes, let my body go to rest, but my mind remained alert. First thing I noticed, I could see the stucco in the ceiling, lifted out of the body, floated towards the Moire pattern, big poster on the wall. I was going to go right through the center, but I blocked it because I wasn't sure who was doing this. I knew this was for real now. I knew I should be able to get through the wall. Got hung up on the easel that I had in the corner of the room and then snapped back into the body. But what I could do then was I was able to have out-of-body experiences at will, but always the wall became a problem. Eventually, I got through. Then when I was with Dr. Baker, he had invited me to come to England to be his protege. I told him, nope, I'm getting married. I had a change of mind, change of heart, but I went on the lecture tour with him. And we were in Detroit. of all places for this to happen. And I stayed up all night studying Diary of an Alchemist and focusing on this seventh ray image here of the I am. Now, I'm not a part of all that, but that image was so powerful. And then in the nighttime, you see the eyes there. Instead of seeing the stucco on the ceiling, I was about to project, I could see these eyes, the most powerful eyes I've ever seen in my life, burning right through me. I was taken out, ascended up. Don't remember everything that happened, even probably blocked some of it, but it was an incredible experience. So in 75, I graduate from the University of Minnesota. I write the Platonic Aesthetics up there. In fact, all of these papers, 1975 is a big date for Scott Olsen. And I was writing on alchemy, Plato's occult doctrine, his epistemology and ontology, how we come to know what exists in the world. And then I'm going to head on over to England, over to the UK. And I had been studying the Mahatma letters to AP Synod in the British Museum much earlier, and they were moved to the British Library later on, but I've done a lot of work with them, and I found the key that really is linked to my purpose in life, and it was we recognize but one law in the universe, the law of harmony, of perfect equilibrium. So Baker had this name for his experiences called esolepsy. And he would go into a deep meditative state at night. He would not actually sleep. He'd put his body to sleep, but he remained alert. I checked on this one day. I'm not going to tell you how I tested him, but I tested him, and he was really pissed at me. I'll tell you that. Well, I will tell you. We got on the lecture tour. We were in the same room one night. Somehow they didn't get us separate rooms in the last place in Boston. Really tough tour, straight from Detroit, Lansing, Chicago, drove directly to New York, then up to Boston, nonstop. And but I heard him snoring like a pig, and I thought, Baker, well. And so I decided to test them, and they did this. Douglas, what? Right in the middle of a snore. His body was asleep, but he was fully alert, and he was not happy with me because he's in the inner worlds, either reading Akashic records or working with the perennials, the Mahatmas. So when I was studying with David Bohm, I was really fortunate. Also, you see here John Hasted, who's doing all the paranormal phenomena, psychic research in Birkbeck College in the physics department. I went and met him. He said, you must study with Bohm. And so I was able to meet with him in his office, only three students, two physics, one philosophy student. And here's what he says. The essential features of quantum interconnectedness are that the whole universe is in some way enfolded in each and everything, and that each thing is enfolded back into the whole. The whole thing is holographic. It's self-similar top to bottom, but each of us have the entire universe within us as a blade of grass. Everything does, but human beings should be awake enough to actually do something about it. So then in 1977, I traveled back to the US and I am accepted to do a doctorate at the University of Florida. Actually, this is not the first subject, but we'll see that in a second. And then in 1993, for a National Endowment of the Humanities, I go and I'm one of 12 people who are studying with Houston Smith. Houston becomes my very close friend, but you'll see a little bit more of that in a little bit. And I work on Plato and the Divine Proportion, Ascent to the First Principles while I'm with them. Then in 2005, I have a major epiphany while working with the curanderos, the shamans in Peru in the rainforest. And then in 2006, about 7 months after the experience, I pen the golden section, Nature's Greatest Secret, which became a national bestseller, international actually, and won first place in the New York Book Show for design. And then I'm jumping to 2021 here, then with three physicists, one Muhammad El-Nashi, we write a grand unification of the sciences, arts, and consciousness, rediscovering the Pythagorean Plato and the golden mean number system. El-Nashi was twice nominated for the Nobel Prize in Physics. And when we did this, I finally figured out the secret of the equilibrium. It's in the golden balance, but we can talk about that a little bit in a second. So in 1977 at the University of Florida, I had qualified to do precognition, space-time, and the logic of scientific discovery. I'd worked closely with Bohm, closely enough to figure out how that whole thing works. Then in 1979, while a student, that won the Mr. Gainesville and the Mr. Northeast Florida, cleaned up. I took all 6 trophies that they had to offer. The only time I'd done anything like that was Mr. Twin Cities. I did 5 trophies. But the following year, the day before I'm to guest pose, 1980 now, a student who's late for her exam, well, make a long story short, she thought it was more important to get to the exam. I flew off my bike, landed on my low back, snapped 7 of the 10 transverse processes. It ruined my bodybuilding career. Did law school because there weren't really many philosophy jobs available. So then came back and did the Pythagorean Plato in the Golden Section, a study in abductive inference as my doctoral dissertation. Ended up down here a year later. Actually, this is now working good. And then in 1993, that's when I went to see Houston Smith, and we were studying the Kabbalah, Meister Eckhart, and Sufism, the 3 Abrahamic religions, where all of them are at peace together, like at Andalusia. That's what should be going on today instead of the nonsense, but enough on that. And we became very, very close friends. Here you see I'm in between Houston and Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, and I just had cracked a joke. I told him I felt like a caduceus. I was the Shushumna, and they were Ida and Pingala, the 2 serpents on the side, and the energy was coming up my spine. And then in 2012, actually for a couple years, I worked with Houston, working with him, and he did the foreword, as I said, for my book. This is important because tomorrow we are going to discuss reinstituting the Eleusinian mysteries, and I am going to talk about entheogens. And Houston always wanted to go down to the Peruvian rainforest with me to do the ayahuasca, but he wrote Cleansing the Doors of Perception, the religious significance of entheogenic plants and chemicals. So then in 1994, I went to the IONS, not IONS, but Institute of Noetic Sciences Conference in Chicago, the Sacred Source, Life, Death, and Survival of Consciousness. It had already been set up for me to meet Edgar Mitchell, so we became fast friends. And then I also took to lunch Raymond Moody, who's famous for Life After Life. Actually, it's the video you need to see, Life After Life with him, the older video that is incredible. I changed more students' lives at this college with that video than anything else. And then Ralph Metzner with the entheogens. En is within, theo, divine, Genesis is bringing the divine without. It's not hallucination. It is entheogenesis is what we're talking about. So then in 1995, I started with the Cairo Sacred Geometry Summer Schools. This is all part of my path, building the antakarana. You do that with your associations, people you work with, the things that you do. Down in the lower left here, that's Keith's A-team. I'm there with John Martineau and Lance Harding. We're on our way to the Chartres Cathedral. But that same year, 95 was pretty big. I also went to Hartford, Connecticut, and I videotaped interviews with many of the major experts on near-death studies. And then I also started my esoteric quest that year when we went to Chesky Krumlov. These are many of the people that I've either interviewed or had close relationships with. Daniel Brinkley, PMH Atwater. Kimberly Clark Sharp is the one who the blind near-death experiencer told her that she needs to go up on the ledge on the hospital there in Seattle. There'll be an old tennis shoe out there because the individual came out of their body and was able to see that. And sure enough, it was there. Ken Ring, incredible, Bruce Grayson, Pim Van Lommel, probably the brightest of the bunch. So these are some of these New York Open Center esoteric quests that I've been on. As I said, I was just on the 17th. I've been on 16 of them. I only missed the one in Wales. We started in Český Krumlov, wonderful place in the Czech Republic, with Rosicrucian Enlightenment Revisited. These are three of my really good friends. They've now passed along. All of them were parts of the esoteric quest, including Keith Critchlow with the Kairos Sacred Geometry, John Michelle, Nicholas Goodrick Clark, incredible people. So now I've just returned actually from the latest quest, and I did a paper or presentation titled In the Shadow of Eranos, Olga Frobe Captain, Alice Bailey, and the International School of Spiritual Research. Incredible. And so you see in the foreground here, Alice Bailey and Olga Frobe Captain. Actually, in the background there, that's Foster Bailey. That is Robert Asagiola, uh, who helped DB, as we called him at the ashram, Douglas Baker, uh, with his studies. He was also known as considerator with the Alice Bailey works. But here's what's interesting. Olga Frobe Captain, I can't give you a talk on it now, but she was something else. Went into extreme silence for 7 years with her daughter, intense dharana concentration, studying spiritual texts. And she had a vision to build a center, and she tried to figure out who should I join with me. She went to Alice Bailey. Now, what's interesting here is because I thought they'd made a mistake. Of course, it's the Tibetan DK who came through Alice Bailey. Uh, but I kept seeing KH, Kutumi, is the one that Olga Frobe Captain kept talking about. And I said, you have to be wrong. And no, I don't think they're wrong. What I think now is these are the Mahatmas that are coming through and started not only this international school, but Eranos, Alice Bailey's school, Theosophical Society, etc. Alice Bailey actually first was confronted by KH, and then later it was DK who came through for her. So in 2002, that's when I basically cracked this mystery about the indefinite dyad in a paper for Nexus Network Journal, The Indefinite Dyad in the Golden Section, Uncovering Plato's Second Principle. And what I did that was different is that I realized greater and lesser are not just relative terms, but in Platonic terms, the greater is the golden ratio, the big golden ratio, the lesser is the small golden ratio, and their relationship then is not what everybody was thinking, that they're related. So the fact you see in the bottom here, this was the key, the fact that the ratio of the greater to the lesser is phi squared, golden ratio squared, and not merely phi, is crucial to this paper, but that basically cracked the code. And the great mystery had been in Platonism, what the heck are the greater and lesser of the indefinite dyad? Plato could not openly talk about this. He concealed it in his dialogues, but Aristotle made it clear that in the academy, these were the two principles. So continuing to unfold or construct my path, my life, 2005 becomes a big trigger time. And as Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss. So at the Claregate Summer School in 2005, I just jotted down the lectures that I gave, and you can see that sometimes Dr. Baker would ride on my back a little bit. I was the #2 lecturer, but you see all of these: Chartres Cathedral, megalithic sites, perception in the congenitally blind during near death and out of body, peak experience in alchemical spawning, Leonardo and the Grail, sacred design, hardware for initiation, mystical significance of the horse, when religion becomes evil, often, morphic resonance in the role of the initiate. So here's an example of me teaching at Little Elephant at the English ashram. And again, you see in the background, I always brought all my charts along with fractals and so forth. And you wonder what's on the screen there. I gained access to the original holograms from Dennis Gabor's laboratory. And these are photographs of the bottom of a tin can resonating at different frequencies. So that is how sound is transformed. Number is transformed into form. It's all about number. And then in 2005, I also lectured with Edgar Mitchell, just over here at the Curtis Peterson Auditorium in Lecanto by the Citrus campus. Consciousness 2005 and beyond. He did Frontiers of Consciousness Studies. I did Consciousness, Resonance, and Self-Identity. Everything is vibratory. Everything is resonance. And as you change your identity, you die to the ego in many, many different ways in your transformative experiences. You change your self-identity in the process. So in 2005, I also entered into the rainforest in Peru. Been there many times since, but I had a major epiphany. I went in trying to study the golden section or prepare to write my book, but it's then that I realized why I'd been bodybuilding all those years. It was to prepare the spinal column and the pranayamic abilities, the breathing, to endure really serious, difficult situations. Now, these entheogens aren't necessarily for everyone, and the way I did it, I'm not recommending it, but I was able to go through the pain barriers as I did with bodybuilding to really enter into understanding the big epiphany which happened. And as a result, I remained awake for 19 consecutive days, 23 actually, although I blacked out for about an hour twice, but 19 without a wink of sleep, continuously entering the eternal now. Five more days in the rainforest while I was there, and then back home another 2 weeks. I remained alert. But I do want you to notice the moths and the butterflies, oops, figured out, didn't want to do that, uh, figured out the center of the Moire pattern that I was going to go through. You see the moth hanging out there. And then I would take the plants. I was trying to figure out where's the 137.5 degree genetic angle, which rules all of nature? Where is it in the pentagram? And what I realized was, or in these flowers, and most flowers, wild flowers are pentagonal, you know that. And flowers are in general, they're Fibonacci in number. That's because they mimic the golden ratio. But what I realized is, as you see the numbers on these, they don't come up in sequence, they alternate. But if you've got 72 degrees for each one of these, that's 144 degrees from the center. But in my mind, I was being taught during my experiences that I should nest the solids in the center, nest the pentagons. And at the fourth iteration, voila, I hit it. And there it is. That's the 137.5 degrees. Bonding via the geometric mean. So for Plato, Plato makes it clear in the Timaeus, two things cannot be rightly put together unless you have a third. The fairest bond is proportion. It's really continuous geometric proportion. That third factor, just like we were looking at Hermes and the as above, so below, that's the secret, is to insert that, and that bonds everything together. So Plato worked with abduction, retroduction, not abducting people out, but abduction, a logical inference method where you're moving away from, you're moving out of the box, as Ariel Sanat would emphasize you must begin to do in his trans-analytic suggestions we'll talk about tomorrow. But what Plato would do is he'd present the anomaly to the member of the academy, they would abduct the solution, and that's what he's expecting the reader to do. Well, why aligned and not numbers? Well, because it's going to be an irrational number, and you can't, it's not really a number in that sense, but with geometry, you can do it. And I'm going to show you something in a second that most people do not understand. So we're putting this on film because I'll show you the secret. So you're going to cut a magnitude of 1. Okay, you start with 1. But now, is there a place you can cut it so the whole is to the longer in the same ratio as the longer is to the shorter? And yes, there is. That's called the golden cut. What Schwaller de Lubitsch in Temple of Man, following the ancient Egyptians, called the primordial scission. That's when we talk Big Bang, it's a scission, it's a cut. And so you have, this is little baby phi, we call it, 1 over phi, 0.6180339. That's little baby phi squared. That's really the lesser, and that's the lesser squared. But here's the trick, and I'm teaching you something now, so pay attention. What you do is you make the longer segment 1 the denominator, and then you know the secret immediately. The whole line has to be big, the greater golden ratio, 1.618. The smaller line now is the lesser golden ratio, 0.618, and there's your trinity of all trinities. That one in the center plays the role of sattvas, rajas, tamas, sattvas, yin, yang, Tao, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Vishnu in the center, it's the middle member of the Trinity. So again, just very quickly, you're taking the whole, you're cutting it. If a person were standing there, as I've measured my students year after year, we're cut at the golden cut at the navel. Ancient Egyptians knew that. And so basically what's happening, you see this, these could be equal signs here in the center. So the whole is to the longer segment, just as or is equal to the longer segment to the shorter. And voila, there's the mystery of the one in the indefinite dyad. And the interesting thing is, this is what was used by Muhammad al-Nashi to solve the mysteries of physics. Incredibly. And people know it, but that's a whole nother story we can talk about another time. You also see the phalanges of the fingers. I usually would use a golden calipers like this to show this, but the whole body is a symphony of golden ratios. I realized this fairly early on in the bodybuilding. It's all symmetry and proportion and aesthetics. And so with Fibonacci numbers here on the left, every number is the sum of the previous two. 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1, 2, etc. These are Lucas numbers. These are even more fascinating. And since you mentioned the 7, we're going to talk about the 7 in just a moment. And up in the top here, here's your 1 and your indefinite dyad, the greater, the lesser. But in the Fibonacci numbers, that plays the role of the 1. This is the greater, this is the lesser, so to speak. It's nature's way of taking the golden ratio and moving it into whole number integers. That's how nature works. And so here we see an example in the bottom here. So you have a pineapple, five spirals here or filaments, 8 here, 13. 8 becomes the geometric mean between these. 5 times 13 is 65. 8 is a geometric mean of 64. So you have to subtract 1. You subtract 1, add 1, subtract 1, add 1, all the way through the Fibonacci series. Up here, this John Martineau had pointed out, you draw a line between Venus and the Earth every day for 8 years, and you get a 5-fold rosette. The golden ratio shows up immediately, and that's 13 years on Venus. 13 is to 8, as 8 is to 5, and there you got it. Microtubules, now we're talking about Penrose and Hameroff in orchestrated objective reduction. They have the closest truth about consciousness in terms of their theory, but it's the whole body. It's not just the microtubules, but microtubules are made up of 13 filaments, 8 spiraling one way, 5 spiraling the other. At the tips of them in the synaptic cleft are clathrons. They're buckyballs. They're truncated icosahedrons. If you take an edge and that's 1, you go across, you have exactly 3 golden ratios. And if you take here, what we see simply is if you make ratios of the adjacent Fibonacci numbers, you find that they asymptotically 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, 5 divided by 3, 1.666. By the way, the Ark of the Covenant, 2.5 cubits by 1.5 cubits, 5 by 3. It's all resonance. It's all golden ratio resonance. You don't have to have perfect golden cuts. If you have the approximations, you get the resonance anyway. But what happens is it goes above and below, and it's being pulled into the golden ratio in the limit. Lucas numbers are even more fascinating. Every single Lucas number is the sum or the difference of the powers of the greater and the lesser. 7 is very interesting. It's the greater to the 4th power plus the lesser to the 4th. And here's what happens. All the way to infinity, the two they fold together, they zip together. Actually, in my book, we tried to get a zipper in there to show how they zip together, and that's where the number 7 comes from. But all numbers, not just Lucas numbers, follow this pattern. So in his foreword to my next book, Divine Proportion, The Mathematical Perfection of the Universe, before he passed, Houston Smith did the foreword. And in the foreword, he talks about when in 2007, I went to the Galapagos Islands and I had found something that it seemed that Darwin had missed. Apparently, he saw this as well, but he didn't know what to do with it. But here's what I found. There's a level of peace and interspecies cooperation, symbiosis, and underlying structural harmony and organization throughout nature and the cosmos. If it's properly understood and assimilated, it may eventually lead to global harmony and cooperation, not what's going on now, and ultimately to that for which we all long, peace on earth. And then in 2010, uh, Alexei Stakov, the great Soviet scientist, actually from the Ukraine, uh, golden number theorist, incredible genius. He invited me. Here I am with his wife in with the other Ukrainian. This pisses me off royal. All of them working together instead of the shit that's going on now. Okay, excuse me, but it's just Putin and Ukraine, what's happening to Ukraine. So here I'm in Odessa, where everybody's working together. It's like Andalusia, when in Spain, you had the people of the book working together instead of the crap that's going on now. And so I helped him with Mathematics of Harmony. Aaron Schmidt, my tech guy, and I, we helped in the translation and the editing of it. Wonderful book, incredible. It's in the library in the Wisdom Traditions collection. Then in 2012, I got the Golden Section book into the Library of Alexandria, returning it. There's Athena, the Greek Durga, that's Durga, standing over us, very significant. Then in 2017, we did the exhibit here I have collected so many paintings from the visionary artists, beginning with Pablo Amaringo. We did this at the Appleton Museum, Mysteries of the Amazon, visionary artwork of Pablo Amaringo and his students. Then in 2018, this is another very interesting thing. Most people, when they hear golden section or golden ratio, they think aesthetics. It's science. When science is working properly and functioning at its best, it's also beautiful. They're one and the same. And then, of course, we do the book, and then that's when I figure out the golden balance. I won't be able to talk much about it, but what I can tell you, it's very interesting. It's when the one is simultaneously the geometric mean between the greater and lesser, but also when you square them, the arithmetic mean and the harmonic mean. This is the backbone of nature. So I'm giving you something that is really going to solve many, many things in the future. So many things I'll be doing with it ultimately, but we can come back to it. I spent a lot of time in Egypt working with El Nashi, but also with the pyramids, trying to figure things out. Probably the wisest writing of all is the Temple of Man. Not easy to crack it, but in it you see the golden section is not a product of mathematical imagination, but the natural principle of the laws of equilibrium. So it's the very thing that I've been pursuing. So again, this is my path. Not saying you got to follow this, but find your bliss, find the thing that you resonate with. So in the Great Pyramid, you will see the semi-elevation here. You'll see this triangle here. There's big phi here. That's unity or one. That's the square root of phi is the height. That's what they were doing. They were encoding the secrets of the golden ratio. Here, Muhammad and I are outside. You see, we're on the Giza Plateau. You see the three pyramids in the background. And his language, this is Muhammad now. And this is why we resonated so closely. He says, the golden mean number system is the lingua franca of nature. He's absolutely right. And if you think I'm blowing smoke, the Nobel Prize winner Gerd Binnig nominated El-Nashi for the King Faisal Award, and he said El-Nashi was able to find the exact value of the coupling constant in which all the forces, the four forces melt into one, the super force. He was able to find the masses, and I put this in my golden section book. He loved it. He realized I had decoded his work. All of the elementary particles are masses, as of the quarks as well, and then some of the fundamental constants. And you see here at the very bottom, he's saying that his work constitutes a grand design and a deeper understanding of nature. Nobody has even come close to Muhammad al-Nashi. I can assure you of that. So we found that there was this underlying paradigmatic structure. I've already basically told you this, but the key here is that it is enfolded into, as the golden mean number system, into the substructure of all existence. This is David Bohm's implicate order, is the golden mean number system that is infused into the Fibonacci, Lucas numbers, all of nature as an explicate order, and the super implicate order is the one in the indefinite dyad, is the one which is the source of all, and the greater and the lesser turn out to be greater golden ratio, lesser golden ratio, and here in the center is the golden balance. Boy, I went quicker than I thought. So here's the paradigmatic symmetry, is this structure. And what you're going to realize here, and this is the golden mean number system, or the golden mean number line, left to right. So there's big phi. We call that little baby phi. Sometimes we use the lowercase instead of the reciprocal. And the structure you find here can travel along, and that's the biggie right there. But no matter where you are in nature, the same structure is constantly at work. And it even does it with Fibonacci numbers. And that was a big, and then we found that it does with the Lucas numbers. And then we figured out how it does with any additive series. I suppose I could take a second to explain a little bit. So in terms of the geometric mean, we're saying that 2 is the geometric mean, really, of 1 times 3? No, it's the geometric mean of 4. So you'd have to add 1. In terms of the arithmetic mean, it's always correct by nature. 3 plus 1 is 4. You divide for the arithmetic mean, you divide by 2, that would equal 2. Here you have 1 times 5 is 10. I'm sorry, 1 times 5 is 5. You double it, 10. You divide by 2. I'm sorry, you divide by 6. So you have to add 2 to make it 12. I don't want to confuse you, but so what happens is you alternately are adding 1, subtracting 1 for the geometric mean, but for the harmonic mean, you alternately add double that, doubles it to 2. But the main thing for your purposes is to see that it actually retains its structure. This is the backbone of nature, the principle of equilibrium. So I should tell you that it does take a village to work things out. It's all the people like here that you work with, that surround you, all the different things you've done during your life, all the things I've done for me, for my path, with the Esoteric Quest, with the International Association with Near-Death Studies, with IONS, with Edgar Mitchell. And so all of these people, Dan Petto, the geometer, David Bohm, the Yogi Amrit Desai, here's Pablo Amaringo, the great ayahuasquero, whose paintings I've collected and those of his students. Frioff Capra. Here's 4 shamans that we brought to the Appleton Museum, and including Tito La Rosa, who won a Grammy with Guitarro and is the expert on pre-Columbian musical instruments. This was really quite a gathering. Here's Ralph Metzner, who I did a lot of work with, indigenous work. Sir Roger Penrose. Here's Lucian Hardy, who figured out something that Penrose had said is important. I'll back up. Penrose said that when there's collapse of the wave into the particle, it must be non-local. Well, when does non-locality occurs? It occurs when there's entanglement. What Lucian Hardy did for us is he figured out when entanglement occurs. It's little baby phi, golden ratio, lesser golden ratio to the 5th power, not approximately, exactly. That's what creates the non-local connection that you heard about earlier being discussed with Marcus, and I think Jeff too. Let's see. And then what else we have? And here I'm in Egypt, we're in Alexandria, we're getting awards. El Nashi had figured out how dark energy and dark matter are functions of the golden ratio. He actually cracked the code. But people have tried, they don't like it because he can do on a hand calculator what it takes them to use the Large Hadron Collider and all the millions, if not billions of dollars. You don't need that. That's a bunch of nonsense. Uh, and then here, of course, is Alexei Stakov, the great, great scientist, mathematician. Here's some others. Of course, we have DB up in the corner there. Evan Alexander, incredible guy, the neuroscientist who had the near-death experience. You probably have heard about him. Pim Van Lommel, probably the best researcher that I know of. Here, Alan is actually filming us in Cobham in England, just outside London, for conversations between me and Muhammad. The last time Muhammad was in Ocala, I brought him here to this room, and he spoke about the universe as a golden mean number system, a golden computer, which it is. It's not just that, but it is that at a minimum. And these you can find on, I think, Vimeo or YouTube. Here I'm with Sir Harold Kroto. We're in the Netherlands. I'm holding a buckyball, which is a truncated icosahedron. He won a Nobel Prize because they discovered that carbon-60, its structure is a truncated icosahedron. I've already told you, clathrons at the tips of the microtubules are that same structure, where if you take an edge, if it's one, you have three golden ratios going across to the other side. Here's Stuart Hemroff. We had Penrose earlier. Absolute genius in terms of the consciousness studies. And let's see, Hart's going to be going there. Hart, and he's either going to give a poster or a presentation. I did it last year, but Hart, you're going to be hearing later. Incredible stuff that Hart is doing. And then, of course, Edgar Mitchell became a very good friend. In fact, I worked on a patent with him for a machine in which you're watching television, Archie Bunker or some program, and you're learning calculus at the same time because it's going in the non-dominant hemisphere, much like binaural beats. I'm looking at the clock, so I'm kind of staying in tune here. So this has been an example of how I have endeavored to uncover my life's purpose and construct the antakarana in the unfolding of my path. Each of us must work to uncover our own unique life's purpose and forge our path accordingly. Although people with near-death experiences or perinatal experiences may have an advantage, and I think they or we do, following one's bliss usually will point us in the right direction. Dr. Douglas M. Baker played a major role in all of this for me, and for which I am eternally thankful. Thank you.